So you've been on the spiritual path for a little while, or you had a more recent spiritual awakening, and you've been filled with a lot of confusion, a lot of doubt, a lot of uncertainty about how much you've grown, whether you have grown, how should I feel when I grow more spiritually speaking? Why do I feel so normal now? Why do I feel all of this doubt and things like that? Well, these are questions that many people have, and so in today's video, I'm going to break down how the spiritual path generally unfolds and why many people feel this doubt and uncertainty about whether they have actually grown spiritually. It might be that you had a big awakening and you had an experience, and then now you're filled with doubt and confusion and things. It might have been a more steady process for you, but many people experience this. And I work now with hundreds of people all around the world, and I've seen this so many times, and I've seen themes that have helped me understand more clearly how this really works, and also with my own journey of 20, 25 years now being on this path and experiencing some of these things myself. So by the end of this video, you're going to have a lot more clarity and hopefully feel a lot more comfort around your own journey, and it will make more sense to you. So to start with, you've been here and you've probably been, like pretty much everyone, like me and everyone else, occupied in life, work, hobbies, friends, family. And then either out of nowhere through an awakening or through just your own steady effort of meditating, your consciousness has expanded. So that's expanded, C meaning consciousness. Your consciousness has expanded. And that is an amazing thing. You've grown and grown and grown, and you might not have perceived that necessarily, or you might have. You might have had a big moment and it was really obvious, but in many cases we don't necessarily perceive that. Now, to help you to understand the next point, imagine that when, we don't need to imagine it because it was a reality, when we all went to school, we would move up year groups. And in the UK, it would, rather than grades, which is the US version, we would go through years. So it'd be like year 1, year 2, year 3, all the way up to year 13, I think it was. And let's say we were in year 7. You would work through the year, and at the end of the year, there was a summer holiday. So there was a period of around 6 to 8 weeks where you then weren't at school anymore. So that was like the summer holiday period. And that was amazing. People would like go off and spend time with family, or they'd go on holiday or to kids clubs, or they'd spend the time at home. And it was a real time where you could like reset, you'd recalibrate, you'd find yourself again, you'd get involved in things that you liked, you'd hang around with your mates. And it was a real time of like catching up. Everything would come back into balance again. Then you'd move on to the following year, which in this case is year 8. So if you imagine that year 7 was one vibration, and then year 8 is the next vibration of energy. In between it is this transitional phase, which was the summer holiday. We've gone from year 7 knowledge to more advanced knowledge in year 8, and there's a period of reintegration that's needed. Well, spiritually speaking, we don't really get that period of reintegration. And so many people experience what I call spiritual dissonance, which is that their consciousness is expanded, but there's many aspects of themselves down here, the family, friends, their old ways of thinking, beliefs, habits, that they're still somewhat connected to. They've not had that period, you've probably not had that period, of being able to reset and recalibrate to this new energy, this new vibration, this new level of consciousness, because consciousness is just energy. What's happened is we're pure energy. We're not just this body, we're pure energy. And that pure energy has picked up in vibration, meaning that your consciousness has expanded. And it's a bit like a system upgrade. You need time to recalibrate and adjust to that new system upgrade. There's many parts of you here still that haven't. And you're picking up on that. And what's happening is that in that space, in that transitional gap, you could say, it's being filled by doubt, it's being filled by confusion, because all of the parts that you associated with the old self, the part of you that hadn't grown, the part of you that was like that before you started meditating, the habits, the different things, you're still aware of them. You're still very much connected to them. They're still very much part of you at the minute because this part hasn't caught up. It's a bit like there's a lag. So your consciousness moves first, and then everything else has to readjust to that consciousness. And that takes time. And I think with spiritual stuff, the consciousness moves first and then everything else catches up. Whereas with many things in life, we act first and the result then follows. We plant a seed and then in a few weeks or a few months or a few years, that grows. Spiritually speaking, the consciousness shifts and we have to adjust to that consciousness, and we don't see the consciousness shift in many cases. So it's quite confusing. But you might have listened to me talk about this and think, yeah, it sounds nice, Ben, but how do I actually know that I've grown? How do I know? How do I not know that the doubt I'm experiencing or the confusion I'm experiencing is not just because I'm confused and I'm doubtful, because I've actually not grown that much? How do you know that? Well, one thing that there's a few different things, but there's one thing that I'm going to focus on today. And it's the one thing that I think is the most consistent sign of progress, the most obvious sign of progress. And it's not peace. Peace is a really clear sign of progress, but many times when people feel this spiritual dissonance, the confusion and the doubt and the everything else overshadows the peace that is there. So the one thing that I've noticed is I'm going to say a reduction in desires. Specifically, desires for things within the world. So it might be literally things. It might be like actual purchases and things that you might have wanted or wanted to buy. It might be experiences. Maybe at one point you were really interested in like traveling and going to different places and seeing different things. And I'm not saying that should have gone, but I'm saying that it might have reduced a little bit. So you might still have places that you want to go, but it might be a lot less than what it once was. It might be that it's not so necessary for you to meet lots of new people. This is a really big one. You're quite happy with a small circle. You're happier. It's not that you're happier in your own space, but you're just as happy spending more time by yourself. So really what it means is that you've kind of expanded. You've gone up here, and down here you had a lot of luggage. There are a lot of things that were connected to you, a lot of things to the world. But as you kind of rise up, the need for a lot of these things diminishes. A lot of the interests drop away. It's like going back to the shifting year groups from year 7 to year 8. If you were to go up from year 7 to year 10, if you were to move from like 10 years old to 13 years old in the space of a couple of weeks, you'd be really confused because you're now operating on a level of consciousness that's of a 13-year-old's, but there's many parts of yourself that still feel like that 10-year-old, and you've not yet fully come into line with where your consciousness is. So it still feels strange to you to do the same things that you were doing at that level, the previous level of consciousness, but at the same time, there's parts of you that still are doing it and still are aware of it. So it's a kind of funny, weird transition, but really what I wanted to do with this video was just shed light on this. Because once you understand this, once you understand that, okay, when I see that my desires are dropping away a bit and that I'm not so interested in some of the things that I was interested in, that's a good sign that I'm progressing. So even if you're feeling doubt, even if you're confused, even if you feel unstable, if you're noticing this, the likelihood is that you've grown, and that's a great thing. And you're feeling now spiritual dissonance, which is just this period where every other part of you is catching up. So it's a process of time. In that period, I would ground. If it's something that's come on quickly, I would ground. So I'd get out with your bare feet. I would hang around with people. I would hang around with your friends and family. I wouldn't avoid those things. I would immerse yourself in those things and just take things slowly. You will adjust. It just will take a bit of time. If you need help on the spiritual path, if you want to learn more about meditation, if you want to be part of a community of other people who are also growing and going through many of these things, then check out my online school. I'll leave a link in the description of this video. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.